You hear it when you buy cereal, shampoo, or a kitchen gadget you absolutely did not need. But that tiny checkout sound hides a surprisingly dramatic story, one involving Morse code, a beach in Florida, and an inventor most shoppers have never heard of. His name was Norman Joseph Woodland, and he helped give almost every product on Earth a secret identity. Welcome to Hidden Minds, the series about ordinary things with extraordinary origin stories. In this episode, we travel back to 1948, when supermarket checkout technology was basically a cashier, a pencil, and heroic levels of patience. And if you enjoy discovering the people hiding behind everyday inventions, follow the channel. History has been keeping a lot of secrets. In 1948, supermarkets were growing fast. More shelves meant more products, and more products meant longer checkout lines. Prices had to be found and entered manually. A cashier might stare at a can of beans and wonder, 29 cents or 39? Behind her, 12 customers waited. One baby objected to the entire concept of shopping, and someone had definitely forgotten where they parked. Stores wanted a machine that could identify every item automatically. A supermarket executive brought this problem to the Drexel Institute of Technology in Philadelphia. The school was not especially interested, but graduate student Bernard Silver happened to overhear the conversation. This is an important reminder. Sometimes innovation begins with years of research, and sometimes it begins because you were standing near the right door. Silver hurried to tell his friend, Norman Woodland. Norman Joseph Woodland was 27, a mechanical engineer and a teacher at Drexel. During World War II, he had worked as a technical assistant on the Manhattan Project. But the skill that mattered most for this problem came from a less secretive chapter of his life. Norman had been a Boy Scout, and he knew Morse code. Dots and dashes could turn language into signals. Could a similar pattern turn groceries into information? Norman became obsessed with the challenge. He eventually left his teaching job and moved to his grandfather's apartment in Miami Beach, which sounds less like a research program and more like an excellent excuse to escape winter. But while everyone else saw sunshine and ocean, Norman saw an unsolved data problem wearing sunglasses. Then came the moment that changed everything. Sitting on the beach, Norman thought about Morse code. He pressed his fingers into the sand and drew dots and dashes. Then he pulled his fingers downward. The symbols stretched into thin lines and thick lines. Suddenly, Morse code had received a vertical makeover. A machine could identify information by measuring the width and spacing of printed bars. The basic idea of the modern barcode was there, in the sand, waiting for the tide to become extremely jealous. There was one problem. Straight lines worked best when the scanner met them at the correct angle. Turn the package sideways, and the machine might become as confused as the old cashier with the beans. Norman and Bernard needed a pattern that could be read from any direction. Their answer looked less like today's barcode and more like a target. Woodland and Silver developed a circular bullseye code made of concentric rings. It could be scanned from many directions, a clever solution. They filed a patent application on October 20th, 1949, for a classifying apparatus and method. The patent was granted in 1952. Unfortunately, circles were difficult to print perfectly on millions of packages. A tiny smear could turn cookies into industrial floor cleaner. Not the kind of surprise anyone wants at snack time. The invention worked in principle. The world around it did not. Computers in the early 1950s were enormous and expensive. Scanners were complicated, and early light sources could be hot enough to make a checkout counter feel like a small artificial sun. Stores needed cheaper computers, reliable lasers, and an industry-wide numbering system. Norman and Bernard had invented a key, but the door it opened had not been built yet. In 1952, Woodland and Silver sold their patent to the electronics company Philco for $15,000. Bernard Silver sadly died in 1963, only 38 years old, and never saw their idea transform global commerce. Then the patent expired in 1969, just before the barcode revolution finally began. History, it seems, has a very dry sense of humor. Norman Woodland had transformed Morse code dots and dashes into a language machines could see. But his beach idea still needed lasers, affordable computers, and one universal design. In Episode 2, we'll meet the engineer who helped turn those lines into the UPC and the packet of chewing gum that made the first historic beep. Follow the channel and join us for the moment shopping entered the digital age. Until then, remember, never underestimate a good idea or a Boy Scout sitting on a beach.